There we go. Okay. Martin Aguinis graduated from Kelley in 2017 with a degree in marketing and tech management. As you just heard, he developed 2 apps while he was an undergrad and has gone on to work at Google, be featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, and start more companies of his own. He has an incredible Kelley story and journey, and we could not be more excited to welcome him here today, even if virtually. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Martin Aguinis.
Hey everyone, I recognize the IMU. Good to see you all. Thank you, John and Maya, for bringing me here today. And I hope to meet many of you in person sometime, hopefully around Little 500 in the spring. That's always a good time to be there. I really miss Kelley. So I graduated there, as John said, about 4 years ago, which was pre-COVID, a very different time. I know it's been a very challenging year. I see many of you wearing masks right now, but I think there are a lot of opportunities that come out of COVID, especially for leaders like you. So I was asked to touch on a few themes today, particularly leading in a time of change, mentorship and rejection, and entering this new workforce that we find ourselves in today. So I'd also love to leave room for questions. I think part of the exciting things with these talks is just being able to answer direct questions, and so I can also hopefully learn from you. So with that, I want to talk briefly about finding innovation through change. So if we think back to the last crisis, one of the last crises before COVID was the 2008 financial crisis. I want to name a few companies that came out of that crisis: WhatsApp, Venmo, Groupon, Airbnb, Instagram, Uber, Pinterest, Square. All of those companies emerged from that last crisis. And it's crazy because if you think about it today, I use Instagram all the time. I use WhatsApp every day. And those didn't exist before, but we take them for granted. And a lot of it was because of the change that was happening that sparked innovation in some of these companies. So, we're in a very global world now. And with COVID, obviously, it's changed a lot of how we can create and innovate ourselves. 99% of people that you're trying to reach, oftentimes, whether it's in business organizations, won't be there in person. Honestly, like me right now, I'm here in Florida and talking to 80 of you remotely. And I don't think this would even be acceptable behavior when I was in college. But it's really important to realize how powerful this can be, from reaching out to people globally to chat with you. So bringing in speakers or getting others to agree to talk with you. For example, I reached out, cold emailed a guy that did 50 Ironman triathlons in 50 consecutive days in all 50 states. I just thought it was an incredible story. So I started reaching out to him, and somehow he responded, and we brought him in for a talk. But also being able to get access to businesses or impacting people in certain ways. So one example I like to give is my last company, Access Bell. So when COVID first started, me and a few friends created a tool that allowed people to instantly network with each other. And what I mean by that is we've all gotten the typical, hey, do you have 15 minutes to talk LinkedIn message from someone you don't know? And oftentimes you want to help. I remember when I was in Kelley, I was an ACE mentor. I would meet with people and be able to kind of discuss career things. And I would also have mentors of my own, but it was so much friction in being able to connect with people that way. And so we create a tool that was like a Zoom having a baby with LinkedIn and Calendly. So as a volunteer, you can just set out 15 or 30-minute slots of when you're free, and other people can actually go in, look you up, click a button, and the tool would instantly book like frictionless digital meetings with you. All of this was because of COVID. People were losing their jobs, they were getting furloughed, and they needed help. And also others were just sitting at home, very bored, able to offer that help. Eventually, we realized that the video tool, Zoom, we were using Zoom at first, and it wasn't working very well because we had to hack Zoom and create all these fake accounts. So we ended up building our own video tool that integrated directly into the system for networking. And over time, volunteers, because COVID kept stretching out, became less. There were less volunteers, but we realized that this video tool is really powerful. And so we started pivoting it to other industries, eventually telemedicine. A few months ago, we ended up selling this company to Tata, which is one of the world's biggest companies. And right now in India, people are using it every day to talk to their doctors, because this tool that started as a networking tool is now an instant telemedicine software for video where you can open it directly to see your doctor in lower bandwidth regions in India. Of course, I didn't start the company thinking that way, but all of it was because COVID made it possible to be able to think through solutions, kind of evolve it over time and find a home for it that is obviously very valuable. So to lead in this new world, it's important to remember how scalable and global things have become and embrace the change. So a second thing I wanted to talk about is embracing hardships as opportunities. So when I was a freshman living there in McNutt, I had joined SIGEP fraternity, and we had to drive, right? And I had to be a freshman, what they called pledge ride, driving people around to parties. And at the time, it was pretty awful because my number would just get texted out that night alongside a few other numbers. And this was before Uber was around. We'd have our numbers texted out to random people on campus. You'd get bombarded by calls. You show up, about 8 people would go in your car. And it was just a really, really bad system. And that was definitely a hardship. I was not having a good time. I did not enjoy my nights, but we realized there's an opportunity here to make the system better. And that's when we created something called Greek Ride, which was, I like to say the Uber before Uber, but obviously we got wrecked by Uber, and that didn't happen. But the idea was we found a problem and we created an app to help people find rides safely to different parts of campus. And that became Greek Ride. But another thing is rejection. And I think rejection is actually a really powerful thing. It's crazy how in life, oftentimes you are in a moment and you get rejected by something, or something doesn't go your way and you think it's the worst thing in the world. And then you look back and realize how important that rejection was. And that for me was consulting. So I was in the consulting workshop, and all of my friends, including my twin sister at the time, were interviewing and getting consulting jobs. So I went to interview with Bain, BCG, McKinsey, Deloitte, and I didn't get an offer from any of them after a year of crazy amount of prep. And I remember how discouraged I was at the time. It was so frustrating. Even my twin sister was going to BCG, and I was like, here I am as a total failure, not having a job out of school. And that's what really turned me into tech. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to have to start looking for other companies. Now, albeit obviously YouTube and Google are not a bad alternative, but I would have never applied or gotten into Google if I'd gotten any offers from any of those 4 firms. And now I look at my life and kind of the career I've taken in tech and in business, and I realize how important that rejection was. Not just rejection though, I think change is important. So after 3 years at Google, I was leading a marketing product called Flutter, which was a way to build apps across multiple devices. And I was the only marketer on the team. So towards my 3rd year, I actually was traveling to about 30 countries a year, giving keynotes, doing case studies. It was really a dream job. And so when my friends found out that I was leaving all of that to go get an MBA and go back to a classroom to study accounting, they thought I was crazy. But the reason I did it was because I was too comfortable, because once you're doing something for too long, I think change is really important. And obviously we don't have much of a choice with COVID and some of the other changes happening, but it's just a reminder. Now I look back, and Access Bell, or this new company I'm starting, or kind of all these new opportunities that come my way would have never happened if I stayed my course. Last thing I'm going to talk about, and then again, I want to leave as much room as possible for Q&A, but just some themes that John asked me to talk about is mentorship. I'm just curious, on raise of hands, who here has heard of a lollipop moment or knows what that is? Okay. So a lollipop moment is a special moment where one individual positively shapes another person's life, but may not realize his or her impact. The reason it's called a lollipop moment is this comes from a talk by a guy named Drew Dudley. He gave a TEDx talk where he talked about how he once was working at university, similar to IU. And the first day when people were lining up, freshmen, to register and get their student IDs, he was just handing out lollipops to people. And he noticed there was a girl in line that was really, really stressed out and really nervous. So he turns to the guy next to that girl, gives him a lollipop and says, hey, I think you should hand her this. She seems very nervous. 4 years go by, and suddenly Dudley doesn't really remember this moment, but he gets a note. It's from that girl. And she said that those 2 people are getting married now. It's really crazy to think about how he doesn't even remember handing that lollipop, but that simple act has changed those people's lives forever. Now, society often associates leaders with individuals that have grandiose titles or large corner offices or make crazy decisions. So people shy away from identifying themselves as a leader. But I think that real leadership is really in the small moments throughout the day, right? It's about having that impact on people, that minor impact that oftentimes can make a huge difference to them. And obviously all of you are leaders in Kelley, and you're going to be able to have that impact this year and kind of beyond that. And so it's really important to think and remember and reflect on that, leadership is not defined by the big keynotes or those massive decisions, but it's really about, the day-to-day kindness and mentorship that you provide to other people. So the last thing I'll say about mentorship is, how do you find your mentors? And I'm a big believer in thinking with the end in mind. So where do you want to be 5 years from now? And work backwards from there, and look on LinkedIn or look at your network and say, okay, who's already there, right? How can I have them guide me? Because that's where I want to go. And the very last thing I'll say, which is something that I've done for the last 15 years, is when I was in middle school, a teacher of ours told us to bring a little picture of ourselves to class, a wallet-sized picture. And we had no idea why. We were very confused, but he said, just do it. So we all end up the next day with a small wallet-sized picture of our younger selves as toddlers. And he said that in life, you're going to have a lot of important decisions, a lot of important moments, a lot of hardships. And whenever you encounter those moments, I want you to remember, look at this picture and ask yourself, am I making that little kid proud? And I actually have it right here, the picture of my younger self that I've had ever since. And I think it's a really powerful thing, whether it's a picture, whether it's the background of your phone, whether it's a watch, but just to have that tangible reminder, because life moves so quickly, to take a step back and really ask yourself, am I making that little kid proud in whatever decisions you make? And that honestly has brought me further in life than most things. So if there's anything you can take away from this quick session, I hope it's that. So anyway, with that, I would love to take any questions you guys have. And I think you're muted, by the way, just heads up. There we go.
Thank you so much for that, Martin. That was incredible. I don't know if you could hear, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So sure. I don't know if you could hear it, but you got some audible ahs with that lollipop story and the little kid picture. So that was, you gave me goosebumps at least. So thanks for that. I'll start off with a question, but in this period, if you have questions, fill out the form now. Martin is also able to see the questions, so he's happy to answer whatever it is that is on your mind. We'll kind of start off here, though, Martin. As emerging professionals, all of us here in this room, all leaders, all emerging professionals, what is another thing? What is something that we are not prepared for currently?
Okay. So again, obviously there's a lot of people in this room, so I can't speak generalized to the masses, but I can reflect on things that I didn't know when leaving school that I feel like I know now in my career. I think first of all is how important and powerful it is to know a lot of people and like your network, and really your IU and Kelley network. Just to give you some context, I currently go to Stanford Business School, and I've again, been at Google, been on this Forbes network. I've gotten a really large network of people. The current company I'm starting with 2 people that both went to IU with me, and I met freshman year. And some of my best friends to this day are people that I met at IU. And it's important to remember that, because I think a few years out of college, everyone kind of goes on their own way, different cities, different jobs. You start, naturally in life, it's really hard to be in touch at all times with people. But I felt like I learned how important it was to touch base and continuing to build those friendships and relationships, not just for business opportunities, just because I think in life, it becomes, as you become more and more of an adult, it becomes way harder to build a lot of those really, really close relationships that you've had these special bonds with. And oftentimes that comes from college. So I think 2 reflections for me on that. One would be enjoy while you're at college, especially your last year now that luckily everyone's there on campus again. I think just enjoy every day. Take time to really realize how amazing it is that you can all go to Roy's the same night and bump into people, because that doesn't happen often in the real world. But secondly, just, find ways to stay in touch, especially with those that really mean a lot to you, because it is easy to accidentally lose touch. And I think, giving people calls randomly or reminding yourself to do that is really, really important.
Thank you for that. I love that. We'll move on to some submitted questions. We'll kind of go in order here. First is from Halak from Beta Alpha Psi. How can you inspire members while also being in a position of authority?
That is a great question. When you look at wolf packs, the alpha of a wolf is actually leading from the back. And they always sit and kind of look when they're out. I know this because we did a Google retreat in LA where we like saw some wolves. I randomly know a lot of facts about wolves that I probably shouldn't, but I thought that was really interesting. And obviously you hear the whole lead by example and kind of lead from the back. But I think to inspire members, I feel it's like the saying, right? You teach a man, you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. You teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So the idea is, when you're in a position of authority, that oftentimes means you have probably a little bit more of knowledge or a little bit more guiding principles that you can help. But that doesn't mean you have to take all the credit. It rather means that you have the ability to empower others more than they do. So to inspire members, I think oftentimes just listening more, really letting them take the stage, right? Really giving an opportunity, whether it's, and consulting probably prepares you for this because you do a lot of the work and someone else oftentimes delivers the presentation. But that idea of, giving others room to thrive and guiding them that way. And so that could be anything from, if you have an event going on, maybe don't have only the exec team speak at it, but bring in random members and empower them to do so. Or, when you're building an organization like I'm doing right now, yes, I'm one of the co-founders of the organization, but during our all hands meetings every week, I oftentimes allow 1 or 2 team members to take the stage and give their updates or even give my updates as a way to empower them to have that opportunity to lead as well or to inspire them. And so I think the important thing is, think about how can you make others feel encouraged, because at the end of the day, I think you go a lot further in life if you don't take all the credit, but you just kind of empower others to do so. And oftentimes it's tempting and hard to do that. But, inspiring people through your acts and through giving them platforms, I've always found is the best way to do it.
Next question is from Andrea from the Women's Network. She says, how do you get through moments of adversity and discouragement? What's the best way you've learned to pick yourself up after things don't go the way you planned?
Yeah. Easy to reflect on after the fact, right? But during the moment, oftentimes things are really frustrating. There are a few things. I think very, very short term is just breathe, go for a walk, go exercise, like take your mind off of things. I think if you're able to find that ability to dissociate the feeling you're having from yourself. So instead of saying I'm angry, think I'm feeling angry, or I'm having the feeling of anger right now, right? Being able to dissociate and really like take a step back and reflect. I think that's important. I think what I mentioned with the little kid crowd, the reason I think that's really powerful is it brings a lot of perspective right away. Right now, unfortunately, the world is going through a really hard time everywhere, from Afghanistan to COVID to, tragedies. And so I think oftentimes when you're going through something hard and you start realizing some of these other problems happening, immediately, at least for me, it brings me perspective and it makes me realize, actually, none of this matters that much. There's a really funny book called The Subtle Act of Not Giving an F. Some of you might have read it. It's an orange cover. And it's exactly that. It's like, how do you try and like really care about the things that matter the most, but then really let other things pass. And I remember, even when I was at Kelley, I was trying to be a perfectionist. I would really like obsess over every detail. And I think later on you realize the ability to say no to things, or the ability to just like let things go, can be very, very important. And finally, I would say, just again, that's the beauty of having good friends and good people, is like, in the moment when you're having discouragement, remember what I said about rejection, and remember that as long as you gave it your all, everything happens for a reason. One example I'll give you again is when I was an intern, I was at YouTube. And when I was going back to Google, I was on a rotational program called the APMM. It's like a marketing rotation program. And I really wanted to go back to YouTube. And so I actually sent them a note, like I made a whole deck saying why Martin plus YouTube equals awesome, why me being back at YouTube would be the best thing ever. And Google said, unfortunately, they don't have headcount. They're going to put me on this thing called Flutter. And at the time I felt rejected. I was like, Flutter is a super technical code tool. I barely know how to code. At the time I was like, this absolutely sucks. It turned out to be one of the best things ever to be discouraged by YouTube and be able to have that other opportunity. Same with when I was taking the GMAT to apply to business school. I took it multiple times and really could just not get the score I wanted. Super discouraging at the time, but I learned to live with that, and I made it more of an effort to work harder on my essays and work harder on the other part of the application. and maybe that helped me get in, right? So just remember that if you're trying your best and you're kind of aiming the right direction, eventually I think you will get there.
Amazing. Next is from Madi from AMA. What is the most difficult aspect of introducing a new concept to a market, and how do you work around it?
Yes, something I've learned a lot in my last businesses is we as humans love habits, and we don't like trying brand new things. We like trying things that are marginally new or slight updates to what we already have. And so, again, an example is when one of the companies I was trying to validate is this idea of when you're shopping for something, being able to press a button and have a live video chat with a sales associate. So if you're on lululemon.com, you press a button and immediately someone can walk you through the website. And I thought in theory, this is great because in a store, the first thing that happens is someone walks up to you and you have that interaction and they can upsell, they can answer your questions, but it would cause the entire store to have to create something brand new, which is having someone to learn how to sit there, like use this new software. And so even though in theory it was great, in practice, it wasn't, and it wasn't working. However, I think when you grab things that already exist and you try and shape this new concept to be aligned with that or have a reference point to that, oftentimes it's much easier to do. An example is what I'm currently doing right now. My new business is called Ngram. A shameless plug, get ngram.com. And it is a tool for when you're giving a gift for someone, when you're buying, let's say, flowers or gift baskets to someone online. Instead of having to type a text note, you can actually record an audio or video message that gets added to that item. So when the recipient receives the item, they can scan and see your message. The system, the e-commerce sites, they all already exist. People already have these stores. But we just added a new component, which is an integration into the checkout flow, but it's not a brand new behavior. It's just enhancing the message option. And I think that's become a lot easier to introduce that to market for a business perspective than something brand new that has absolutely no reference points, unless you're, of course, Steve Jobs and kind of nail it with the iPhone, right? So yeah, that's kind of a big learning for me. And how working around it is, again, just try and find things that are similar in markets that are used to those things.
Great question, Lonnie. Thank you. Next is from Isaac Cole from Bet Club. What book would you recommend that stands out in your professional career?
Awesome. I actually have a whole book list. I'm happy to forward to you after, John, if you want to send it around. I have a whole recommendations list, but I'll name a few that have really, see the thumbs up there, a few that have really shaped my life. One is called the Mom Test. And this one's specifically for business. So I've read many business books, from Lean Startup to Lean Launchpad, Startup, all those books. I think the reason that the Mom Test really stands out is it's called the Mom Test because your mom's always going to say she loves your ideas. And so how do you get beyond that and actually validate and ask questions that will genuinely give you insights to be able to create real organizations or real businesses? And this is a very, very good book because it gives you examples of how to ask the right questions in the early days that save you so much time from accidentally building the wrong thing. So if you're thinking about building a new organization or a business or a new club, I think the Mom Test is actually a really, really powerful book. There's another book, more of a life encouraging book, which is the reason I started running marathons and the reason why I just, have this zest for life. It's called Can't Hurt Me by a guy named David Goggins. This man was born 300 pounds, was discriminated against. His father left him. He had basically the worst cards growing up. And he went on to be the #1 Navy SEAL in the United States, breaking world records, running ultra marathons. Unbelievable story. And I think it's just it's a strong, especially the first few chapters are heavy, but it's an incredibly encouraging and powerful story on how to get the most out of life on a personal note. And so if you want to, more motivation when you're working out or all of that. One more thing I'll say, this isn't a book, but it's the favorite speech I've ever seen in my life. And I think you guys should all watch it, is the commencement address of UT Austin 2014. It's by General McRaven. And it's the famous "Make Your Bed Every Morning" speech. You might have heard that slogan, but this is just a very, very powerful commencement address that I actually watch every single year that I think just really, really invigorates me to do better. So there's a few, and I'm happy to send a few more over after this.
My mom definitely does not say yes to everything that I do. So I'm envious of your mother and anyone else's mother. I have one more question. And then I guess we'll try to wrap this up unless anyone else tries to submit anything else in the next couple minutes. Do you have a lollipop moment of your own that stands out to you? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, that's a good one. I do. I have a few. I think one of them is after my freshman year of high school, I moved from Colorado to Florida. And I'm from Argentina originally, Buenos Aires. My whole family is. So we were very unfamiliar with educational system here when I was first going through it and kind of how things worked. And when I moved to Florida, I was signing up for classes like basketball and some like really fun high school classes, because at the time I wasn't as focused on doing business or anything like that. And as I'm walking through touring the school, we ran into this woman named Deborah Carter, who was the accounting professor at my high school. And she looked at my sister's schedule and looked at my schedule. We're twins, so we went at the same time. And she realized that I'm taking basketball and all these other ones. And she says, "No, Martin, like I'm putting you in my entrepreneurship class. You should sign up for that. Basketball is just not going to be good for you." I'm like, okay. So I switched it. And because I switched that class, I was introduced to business, and I did DECA and I did entrepreneurship, and I was able to go to Kelley. And honestly, so much of my life happened because of that one day where she just told me to switch one class. So that's definitely a lollipop moment that for her, she just barely remembers telling me to switch it. But for me, it made a world of a difference.
Looks like we have one more. Ethan from AK Sci says, how do you balance trying to further your professional career while maintaining your social life and relationships?
I like the quote that says, if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person. Because oftentimes those are the people that can really manage their time and work really smart and not hard. So I religiously follow my calendar. And I really do block off times to just not work, hang out, and do things. And I think oftentimes, like when there's a will, there's a way. So the way I do it is I just, really try and, when I am working, block off distractions and get a lot of things done. One book I like is called The One Thing, which talks a lot about how do you do this? How do you really focus on the one most important task of the day professionally, and how everything else just falls into place when you do that. So that's a good book if you're thinking about time management and how to get a lot done out of it every day. But again, for me, relationships, social life is incredibly important. I go to main reason people go to business school really, but for me, it's critical. So I always just make sure to prioritize that, just like professional, and just, if I have to work a bit on the weekends, because I didn't get much during the week, but make sure I block off time still for hanging out with people I care about. That's kind of what I do. There's nothing else really, unfortunately, there's nothing else that comes to mind for me, but I think just, blocking off that time to work and really try and get all of it done, then you feel even better when you go party or you go hang out with friends, knowing you got your work done anyway. But I think in today's world with Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, millions of texts, it's so easy to get distracted that oftentimes I remember just putting it on airplane mode and working on one thing for 3 hours, and I couldn't believe how much I got done. So if anything, that's probably how I do it.
Amazing. Can we give another round of applause for Martin, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And, if you guys, again, I know we had very little time and I had to cram a lot in, but feel free to add me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter, or, we can be in touch, and I can send John a few more lists if it was helpful. But good luck with this year. I will try and come out in the spring, hopefully. But, you guys are all the leaders here.